I've heard you talk about victimhood a lot. And you said that people get rewarded for being victims by our society, the way that it operates now. How are they getting rewarded?
With attention. And that's why, it started out being something that these kind of like woke progressive people did. Now the right is doing the same thing. Look at us. Look at what they've done to us. Look at what because it's how you get attention. Social media, where a lot of this stuff is coming from, rewards people complaining, rewards outrage, rewards people presenting themselves as the victims of some evil oppressive force. Whereas if you go on social media and go like, hey guys, I just think, your life's your responsibility, go out there and crush it as best you can.
It's not as popular.
Right? It's not going to get anything like the same response. So we've created a communication system that rewards people with attention, and we live in an attention economy.
So how do we change that? Because I think you and I both want to change that. My experience is that once I started focusing less on our political figures and more on like entrepreneurs, the VC world, my life got a lot better and I started making more money and I was like, holy shit. And the realization I had was it's because these people are problem solvers. All day, these entrepreneurs are sitting there trying to solve problems and they see life as their responsibility. So what's your take?
Well, my take is A, to spread that message, and B, with TRIGGERnometry, which is now moving from being a YouTube show to being a media organization, we're going to have other people come under our umbrella, etc. Trigger Media is essentially where we're going, is to change the culture through the way we have conversations. And long-form discussions like this don't reward. If I sat here crying about how blah, 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 it wouldn't really work, right? And so I think it's the medium is the message. You heard that phrase? The medium is the message.
What does it mean?
It means that where you have a discussion matters almost as much as what you're saying, because it determines what you're going to say. If you are operating on Twitter, that will force the conversation to be a particular way. If you're having a conversation on a 3-hour podcast, that will force the conversation to be a different way. Do you see what I mean?
And the 3-hour podcast is more effective, you feel like. But it doesn't get as much attention.
No, it doesn't get as much attention. However, that is what people really want, right? Like it's, social media is junk food. Long form conversation is the real thing. It's actual food. It's real food.
But I don't know if that's what people want. It's what's better for them. But I think they want to find people that believe what they believe, follow them, and be like, that's the right way. That's what I see on social media, where it's like, I understand that people are so happy about, some people are really happy about, Elon Musk and what he has done with X and free speech and community notes and all of that. And in a way, I think it's really good too. But we're not having these kinds of conversations unless, like, I don't know if you know Mario Nafal is like moderating a discussion on X, and I don't know if he's even the right person to do that.
I don't know. I haven't listened to any of his discussions, but I see him popping up every now and again. I think I was actually told something interesting by a friend of mine who's, she's kind of on the woke side of things, but she's a very good person. And she said that when Elon took over and made the changes, what actually happened is it's not that we're now having a more kind of in the center balanced conversation. It's that all those people who didn't like what he did left and went to Instagram, and now Instagram is full of political conversations that are to the left of where they used to be on Twitter, which I didn't know, which was actually, it would back up your point. And look, of course, there's nothing people want more than a robot that's going to go, you're absolutely right about everything, right? Like people love to hear that they're right. And especially I think as a woman, you kind of know that with guys, you just have to go, yeah, oh my God, such a good point. And like they instantly,
melt.
They melt. And at the same time, I think there are a lot of people who are starting to realize the impact it has on them. Like you open Twitter and you spend a couple of hours on Twitter. How do you feel at the end of that?
I feel horrible.
Right. So ultimately, people do not want to feel horrible at the end of the day. So we have to create and things that make people feel better. You know.
What are you planning on creating?
Well, Trigger Media is the idea of creating long-form conversations about various topics that are attempting to be informed and entertaining and funny, and at the same time do not go down the rabbit hole of outrage and whatever. But it's actually a real conversation. I mean, yesterday we recorded the biggest episode in the history of our show with Sam Harris and Eric Weinstein talking about Israel and Palestine over 3.5 hours.
I can't wait to listen to it.
It's going to be incredible. And nobody in that is frothing at the mouth and screaming and shouting. There's disagreement. People have a different view. That's, I think, how you start to address some of this. On the flight in here from Austin, because we spent a few days in Austin, I was being a bit cheap and I didn't want to pay for the Wi-Fi on the plane.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's watch the free TV. And I went and I watched MSNBC and Fox switching every 5 minutes. It's impossible to watch. It's like, if you want to be informed about the world, that is not the way you get informed about the world.
What is the way you get informed about the world?
Well, that is very difficult. It's a very difficult question because new media is definitely helpful. New media is what we do. However, it also has its pitfalls where it's like you don't really know who to believe exactly, right? The way I inform myself is I kind of observe over time people who do not pander to their own side. That's how and that's what drew me to your work, because not only did I see you not doing that, also when I got to know you personally, I was like, oh, he's willing to be wrong and curious and all of these things that we've lost as a society. Yeah, well, curiosity to me is the number one thing. It's why Joe Rogan's the biggest podcast in the world, because he has curiosity at an incredible level. But the way I can kind of tell when somebody is someone who thinks well is when they're not agreeing with their own side on everything and are prepared to challenge their own side. That's when I go, okay, this person's willing to be honest in public. If your opinion is the exact same opinion as everybody on your side, if I can predict your opinion about Israel and Palestine because of what flag you've got, do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Then you're probably not, doesn't mean you're wrong about everything. You'll probably be right a lot of the time and you might be funny and creative or whatever, but chances are you're going to be wrong on a lot of stuff because you're not really thinking. You are in a tribe and the tribe is dragging you in whatever direction you're supposed to go in.
So here's my issue. Why do our tribes have to be political? Why do we have to choose a side? Because I think the best way to come together is through our own humanity. And that's what we've lost.
I don't think we lost that. I don't know that we ever really truly had that. I mean, there was a lot of research on this. Oxytocin, the hormone which binds, it's the hormone a woman releases when she's giving birth, etc. The hormone that binds groups together. It's also the hormone that it causes us to be wary of other groups. We are tribal apes. That's what we are. And the question is, what is the right size and scale of the tribe in order for us to function well? And my worry with Western society is that instead of seeing our country as our tribe, right? Americans, British people, Westerners, whatever that is, it's like, no. We're going to break it down into tiny little groups in America who are supposed to all be fighting each other, who are supposed to all be hating each other.
What are the groups that you see?
Oh, I mean, you can slice it 100 different ways. Men versus women. Whatever moron came up with the idea that the relationship between men and women is a versus, right?
Worse.
That guy, whoever did that needs to be taken off and shot somewhere, right? That is not the nature of the relationship between men and women. Men and women have needed each other to survive and to thrive and to raise children and to reproduce society and to do anything for the entire history of the human race. And without that sacred bond between men and women, nothing happens. We're not even here, right? So whoever wants to define the relationship between, it's like, men versus women, look at what the men are doing, look at what the women, that is the most toxic approach to the whole thing ever. And then you can go down the list: black people versus white people, minorities versus the majority. There's 100 other ways you can define it. LGBT versus. You can go down the list, right?
Yeah. Do you know where I think that came from?
Tell me.
I think the number one thing people need to have in their lives is a sense of belonging. And you hear this word community a lot, right? But if you talk to people about their childhoods, for example, a lot of people will give you a story about a community that they grew up in that rejected them. For example, someone who is gay who felt incredibly ashamed of it because they grew up in a religious organization that said, you can't be gay.
Mm-hmm.
Or, someone who was any religion who grew up feeling like they couldn't be themselves in whatever capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And so then as you grow up, you realize, oh, these people didn't accept me. And then the world convinces you that they are your enemy, whether it's men, women, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start breaking off in those ways.
Here's the thing, though. Trauma is a part of life. Everybody grows up, and at some point early in your childhood, somewhere around 5 or 6, usually something happens, and it can be major, it can be minor, where you go, oh, the world isn't perfect. Because as a child, you think it is, especially if you've been fortunate to have a loving family environment, etc. And then you see your parents argue for the first time, or something else happens. Your dad gets angry, whatever. And then you go, oh, and that moment happens, and you have to adjust, right? So we all go through childhood and then adolescence experiencing some really disturbing, disruptive things to the way that we see, including the type of things that you're talking about. The question is, do you want to be living out your trauma for the rest of your life? Do you want to be living through your trauma? Because have you ever heard the phrase perception is projection?
What does it mean?
So perception is you receiving information. Projection is what you put out there. You're like a projector. You project things onto the wall, right? The way we see the world is not like, oh, I see reality. You project things into the world, and then you experience the consequences of the things that you're putting out there.
Right.
So, for example, if you think all women are bitches, it's going to be your experience that women are bitches to you because you're bringing that energy into the room, and women look at you and go, that guy's a douche. And they treat you as if they are bitches, even though it's not true. If you think all men are pigs, right, you're going to have that experience drive everything that you experience in life, right? And the truth is, some women are bitches and some guys are pigs, but not all on either side. And how you see that is going to determine what your experiences are. And so you have to actually look at reality. The reality is, men and women are all a spectrum of various kinds of behaviors. There are some good people, there's some bad people in every group. And you have to learn to operate from that basis. You have to see reality for what it is. This is what our friend Tom Billy always talks about, right? It's about what works, not what sounds good or not what makes you feel good in your head. And so if you look out into the world and you clean those glasses through which you're looking at things with, you're going to have a better experience of life.
I agree. I mean, you told me that even personally when I've talked to you about my own experiences, where you're like, you're losing your power by seeing stuff that way. I like that a lot. We lose our power when we don't clean the glasses.
And also, I think it's useful to have, I call them useful beliefs. See, not everything you believe is true. And actually, one of the ways to be a happier human being, in my experience, is not to believe everything you think.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, that person hates me. Really? Do they? How do you know?
Yeah, are they having a bad day?
Yeah, are they having a bad day? Whatever. And useful beliefs are beliefs that are helpful but not always true, right? It's useful to believe that you can do anything. However, I think it's pretty clear that at 40 years old and 5'9", I'm never going to play in the NBA. But when I was a kid, it was useful for me to dream of that and to think that I one day could, because it meant that I worked hard at basketball and I learned to work with other people. I learned to work hard. I learned to grind. You see what I'm saying? So one of those things is a useful belief. And a useful belief is in relation to men and women or making money or whatever, is something that makes you better, makes you more receptive to good things happening to you. Doesn't mean that you're naive and you're running around, everyone's fine, right?
Yeah.
But believing that, the vast majority of the opposite sex are good people with good intentions, in my opinion, is a good strategy. That doesn't mean you ignore signals, right? But if your starting position is the person I'm talking to is likely to be a good person, you will much faster get to finding out who they really are. And I learned this from my wife. I used to have a very negative and pessimistic mindset about everything,
Really?
especially about other people.
What was the mindset? And
Very cynical, you can't trust anyone, everyone's out for themselves, blah, 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 blah.
I think I grew up with that too, because everyone around me was always suspicious of each other. And also, I don't know if you've heard, in Iranian culture, it's something called chesh, evil eye. And you see it in American culture too, where like you sage the room. Have you ever seen that?
You sage the room.
You haven't heard of sage? So
Sage the herb.
sage the, yeah, but you like burn it to get the evil eye and the bad energy out. Or like we Iranians have something called esfand, which you burn, which gets rid of the evil eye too. It's like a really big thing that people believe in. That people are out to get you. They can't stand to see you happy. Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So what made you change that? Your wife had an impact on you, but what?
Well, what I noticed is that my wife, she thought everyone was wonderful. And it put her in difficulties too, because it was an unrefined worldview. It was like, oh, everyone's being nice to me because they're just really nice. And I was like, no, it's because you're a hot girl. And they want something from you.
Yeah.
So she had to adjust that to understand that some people aren't being nice because they're nice, right? But what I learned was that she gave people a lot of, she had a lot of faith in people. She believed that people are, generally speaking, good. Everyone has something inside of them that is worth exploring, etc. And when she approached people that way, people who had a guard up would lower the guard, and they would become much more amenable to a healthy conversation, a healthy friendship, whatever. And that's really the thing. We're all walking around with that suspicion, but when you show trust in the other person, they will trust you as well. A lot of the time. So, I think there are useful beliefs about how to treat other people and how you think about other people that change your experience of life. And I think you and I have talked about this a lot, obviously, about the mutual suspicion and resentment between men and women. I think a lot of it comes from the fact that women go online and they see what guys are saying and they go, oh, guys are all like this. And then they take that out into the real world. And therefore, the guys that they experience in the real world are already being seen through that filter. And they end up meeting those expectations. And likewise with guys. They see what women say online. And they go, oh, all women, want me.
Are gold diggers and, yeah.
And then when they talk to a girl in real life and she mentions anything about money, they're like, oh, see, I told you.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody's wearing these shit-stained glasses when they're looking at people on the other side. And, you got to clean the glasses. You got to clean the glasses.
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing that I have a serious problem with, going back to what we were saying before, is these political